you everyone for being here. This is RCE Board Clerk Lori Taketa here with today's housekeeping announcements. For those of you here at the work and use microphone throughout the meeting. Please remember to speak clearly, one person at a time. And please say your name when you start talking so people online and on the phone can follow the discussion. Online board members, Director Moore Gaina from Blue Lake Rancheria, that's you. Please keep your camera on throughout the meeting and unmute your microphone when you're speaking. For community members planning to speak during public comment periods, please click the raise hand button in the webinar controls or press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute. And raise your hand early so that we don't miss you. Email public comments are being accepted at publiccomment@redwoodenergy.org until the chair closes the public comment period for that item. And if you are participating remotely and your connection is disrupted, please notify us if you can by calling or texting 707-382-7336 or by emailing publiccomment@redwoodenergy.org.
All right, thank you, Lori. And then can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, Director Arroyo from the county is absent. Director Renee Contreras Deloach. Here. Director Skip Jorgensen. Here. Director Chris Mobley is absent. Director Frankie Myers is absent. Director Heidi Moore Gaina.
Present.
Director Scafani. Here. Chair Schaefer, Sarah Schaefer.
Here.
Director Jack Tuttle is absent. Director Frank Wilson is absent. Director Sherry Root here. And there is a quorum.
Thank you, Lori. That'll take us to our second item, which is reports from member entities. Are there any reports from our member entities?
I have one.
Okay.
Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District has offered a contract and it's been accepted for a new general manager when John Friedenbach retires. And her name is Michiko Maris. She is a Humboldt native. I think grew up around Bridgeville. And went to the Bay Area to work some and now she's back. Yeah.
Exciting stuff for the new year. Anybody else? All right, that'll take us to item 3, which is oral and written communications. This is the time for people to address the board or submit written communications on matters on the agenda. Do we have any public comment here in person? Not seeing anybody on Zoom.
No one online, but there was some written comment submitted that's available at redwoodenergy.org.
Okay, thank you. So that will take us to the consent calendar. All matters on the consent calendar are considered to be routine by the board and are enacted in one motion. There is no separate discussion of these items. If discussion is required, the item can be removed and considered separately. End of the reading of the consent calendar, board members or members of the public can request that an item be removed for separate discussion. So item 4.1, approve the minutes of the October 24th, 2024 board meeting. Item 4.2, approve disbursements report. Item 4.3, accept financial reports. Item 4.4, accept quarterly budget report for fiscal year 2024-2025 Q1. And item 4.5, take the following rural regional energy network North administrative actions. Item 1, to award professional services agreements for rural North regulatory and legal services to the law offices of Susie Berlin through December 2027 for a not to exceed value of $280,000. And to authorize the interim executive director to execute all applicable documents subject to RCEA general counsel review. Item 2, to award professional services agreements for the rural Ren North marketing services to The Engine is Red through December 2027 for a not to exceed value of $115,500. And authorize the interim executive director to execute all applicable documents subject to RCEA general counsel review. And item 3, approve a memorandum of agreement between Redwood Coast Energy Authority, Lake Area Planning Council, Mendocino Council of Governments, and Sierra Business Council for Rural Regional Energy Network North, and authorize the executive director to execute the agreement substantially in the form attached here to as attachment D on behalf of RCEA and in consultation with legal counsel. Authorize the executive director to approve any future amendments to the agreement, provided that the amendments do not fundamentally change any material terms of the agreement or measurably increase risk of exposure for RCEA. All right, That's our consent calendar. Does anybody want to pull any of these items or any members of the public want to pull an item from consent? Not seeing anybody and probably not seeing anybody on Zoom. Do we have a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar? Second. All right, we have a motion by Director Jorgensen and a second by Director Stefani. And we'll do it by roll call because we have a remote participant. Yes, okay.
Director Arroyo is absent, Director Contreras Deloach,
Are you saying yay or yes? All right,
Director Jorgensen.
Yes.
Director Mobley is absent, Director Myers is absent, Director Moore Gaina,
Yes.
Director Stefani, yes, Chair Schaefer,
yes.
Director Lee, yes, motion passes.
All right, so that will take us down to item 7, because we have no CCD business and no old business, so we are going into new business 7.1. Which is a presentation on the RCEA's Renewable Energy Vehicle Network. So. Take it away, Mike, thank you very much.
So yes, my name is Mike Apcale. I'm a senior manager in our infrastructure planning department. With a focus on transportation initiatives. And so the topic of the presentation today is our renewable energy vehicle charging network, RevNet, as we say. And would I be able to advance my slides if I manage? Okay, that's great. So just to start off the presentation, I'll just revisit some repower goals that are transportation related. Repower is our strategic planning document. And so, one of our targets was to get to 6,000 electric vehicles in Humboldt County by 2025 and 22,000 vehicles by 2030. Another goal is to develop workplace, public and residential electric vehicle charging to support those electric vehicles. And those are just ways to reduce the transportation related greenhouse gas emissions. The goal is to reduce that by 65% by 2030 and to maintain a trajectory to get to zero fossil fuel use in the transportation sector by 2050. That just sets the stage for what some of our broad goals are related to transportation. This is some recent information from the draft climate action plan at the county, and the most recent greenhouse gas inventory, which was done, greenhouse gas emissions inventory, which was done in 2022, shows that transportation is a significant contributor to greenhouse gas emissions in Humboldt County. So 73% come from our on-road transportation, and 8% of the emissions come from off-road. So it is a very significant chunk of our greenhouse gas emissions. And so, so a lot of our work is gonna be solutions or strategies to reduce that. And so just wanted to, as recently as 2015, these numbers were a lot lower. As recently as 2015, the number was something like 56%. So as changes in certain point sources of pollution have gone away, transportation has become a bigger percentage of what's left. It's not that we started driving more necessarily, but it's something that we want to tackle. So just to set the stage for where we're at within our goals, the California Energy Commission has a little tracker that we took a snapshot of. I don't know if I can point with this. Let's see, do I have a pointer?
I saw it for a second.
Thank you.
A little faint.
There, okay. So this is how many we have on the road today, 2,513, not today, this is as of 2023. That was the last time data was available, that was the last time this data was refreshed. Out of about 105,000 vehicles in the county. And, so just to reiterate, our goal by 2025 was 6,000. We have another look at this, then same data, different formatting. From the Department of Motor Vehicles, you can track from, I think this is 2010 down here, very few EVs. And we have two types of electric vehicles. There's a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, PHEVs, and they have some electric range, and then they'll convert over to a hybrid engine. But you can plug them in and charge, and they have that all electric range to start. And then there's full battery electric vehicle. And so you see that kind of teal, I got it. Teal color down here are the plug-in hybrids, and the blue is the battery electric vehicles. And this still shows us at about 2,500 One thing that the other graphic didn't show us is that, you know, in 2022, we're still stopping at 2023 here. But in 2022, there were 2,128 vehicles, and then we're up to 2,515. So that's an 18% year-over-year growth in electric vehicles. If we extrapolated that out to 2024, we would get around 2,900 vehicles. And by 2025, our target year and our goal, we'd have about 3,500 if we saw the growth continue. So not quite there yet, but also not bad. I mean, that's progress, and progress from where we were in 2010 for sure. So again, just kind of showing where we're at with those goals. And then this is the same, you know, the Energy Commission is a great source of data. And so the California Energy Commission also tracks not only the vehicles, but the chargers available. And we pulled up for Humboldt County, there we are. And with 182 publicly available level 2 chargers, this number here, and you know, I apologize, these slides just, the numbers don't show up really well. And 50 DC fast chargers. So our CEA's network of electric vehicle charging stations are level 2. We offer 56 ports. So if we look at the number 182, we're fully 30% of the publicly available chargers in the county are chargers on our network. One thing that's a little obscured in this data, that number 182, they're counting shared use chargers. So if you go to a lot of hotels will have a charger available for their guests. That's not necessarily publicly available if you're not a guest at that hotel. That's not a charger that's available to you. But it is a shared use charger and it ends up in this bucket. But if you really look at publicly available chargers, the City of Arcata has some, Tesla Network offers some, our CEA's network offers some. But for what we consider what's like on our network, anybody can just pull up their car and charge on it. 182 is a little inflated, so we probably have close to half or more of the available, really truly public level 2 chargers. And you know, that is also one of our goals, right, to support and develop public and workplace charging. So we have a few initiatives that help address our goals. The network, this first bullet point is what I'll dive into after setting the stage. And we're expanding our network. So this, you know, phase 2, this board has really gone a long way to supporting this work. Earlier this year, several times we brought to you contracts for award to help us go to construction on this phase 2 grant program. So you've probably heard about our network expansion project in the form of those contracts that have come before you. We do have electric bike vouchers. That's a way to reduce our vehicle miles traveled and electrify vehicles by giving and then electrify transportation by giving rebates for electric vehicles and home chargers. So those are some of our initiatives that we have to try to address those goals. But now I'll just dive right into RCEA's Renewable Energy Vehicle Network. If you were on the ChargePoint app, you would find a map much like this map. And that's Willow Creek out in the east is the farthest extent of our charging stations. We go as far north as Trinidad and as far south as Rio Del, with lots of little dots in between. And you can see the port count by locality here. And that is, again, 29 level 2 charging stations. Most of them have 2 ports, so you can plug in 2 cars at once. So we would say, and some of this is jargon, but I'll try to explain it. So those 29 stations, many of them are 2 ports. We have a total of 56 level 2 charging ports. If we had a big event someday, maybe we could see all 56 of those ports used at once. If we really promoted it, we could be charging 56 vehicles all at the same time. So that's our current network. Same map, but if you actually went out to one of these dots, which I do regularly, and I use the network for workplace charging and when I'm out in public, our charging stations look just like this. They're all ChargePoint stations. They all have, almost all of them have the 2 ports, 1 and 2, where you can plug your vehicle in. They sit in a little holster here. You initiate charge with a phone app, with an RFID card, or any credit card that's got the tap to pay function. You just walk up and initiate a charge. They're fairly easy to use. And we branded it. That's our logo. This happens to be at the Arcata Community Center, so the City of Arcata's logo's on there. It was some information on who to call if things go wrong. But that's what they look like when they're out in the community. They also kind of look like this. This is right across the street from our offices. There's one charging station. there's another one. In this case, there was no electric service here, so this little green box is our electric metered service. It's a part of most of our installations when we want to install these chargers in the public. There's typically not enough power available in the neighboring building or anywhere else, so these are high draw electric items, and we typically have to support that with a new metered service. So we own and operate this network across the county, single largest public network in the county. Just restating the numbers, at 17 different sites, 29 stations with 56 level 2 ports, and the most recent ones are these 4 new ports on H Street in Eureka. These are really high use stations. When we get them in our denser population areas, they get used a lot, and that's really great for our network, and it helps the economics work out of us owning and maintaining the stations. When we get farther out, we're providing a critical service to, say, the driver in Willow Creek who might otherwise get stranded, but we don't see as much use on those stations. And so it's kind of just some, again, more details, but what you see is year over year, we're distributing more energy. That's this graph on the left. And so in 2016, about 2,000 kilowatt hours in these 20,000 kilowatt hours in a year. We're up to, over 120,000 kilowatt hours in a year. We look at it monthly. We say, right now our peak month was last month, 16,000 kilowatt hours. Every month we've been increasing. So as those vehicle numbers increase, the amount of kilowatt hours dispensed on our network tends to increase. Just point out that 2024 here is we just have partial data. Otherwise, it would exceed 2023. It will in a couple months when we're done collecting our data. And every kilowatt hour that you dispense on the network can be translated into greenhouse gas emission savings compared to driving that vehicle on a higher fossil fuel like gasoline. So compared to all these kilowatt hours, we're actually gallons of gas. We've saved a lot of greenhouse gas emissions. So just kind of showing that each year those are improving. And if anybody was wondering why 2020 was such a down year, the pandemic really took a hit on our network. People just weren't out in public, so public use networks were not used this much. Our network is reliable. We take a ton of pride in this. I can tell you when I go to the Bay Area, or I go down to the LA area or San Diego, and you all probably have read about this, but if you drive an EV to a charging station that doesn't work, you're less happy about your choice in vehicle. It's really frustrating when chargers don't work. We have a 99.91% uptime. Most of the time, when someone shows up to one of our charging stations, it works. We keep them clean. We make sure the payment module, the 3 types of payment that I described earlier, all can work. Our granting agencies require now 97% or greater because people got wise to the fact that getting grant money to install a charging station without an uptime requirement led to people walking away from the station after it was installed. If a company like ChargePoint can get paid to install the machine, that can sometimes be enough of an incentive for them to get the grant money without worrying about whether the station is available for use. The granting agencies now require 97%. We're really happy that we exceed that all the time. We go out and do regular maintenance checks. We have a good relationship with ChargePoint. We'll dispatch technicians when it's anything our staff can understand and identify. And so just to talk a little bit about that network, we're trying to expand it. The Resilience Hub is the grant that I mentioned earlier. It's got a cool name and number from the California Energy Commission's Clean Transportation Program, ARV 22008. Remember that? Don't remember that. We got $700,000 plus some RCEA match, a 20% RCEA match to install. We're going to be installing 32 level 2 ports at 10 community locations. These newer stations will charge up to 19.2 kilowatts instantaneous rate of power versus our current stations. The one I showed you a picture of is a much lower rating, 7.2. So newer vehicles have bigger battery banks. These newer charging stations that can charge quicker are an effort to serve that newer need in our community. Lower rates of charge are great for workplace charging, but if you're stuck somewhere, you want a faster charge. We also have looked into vehicle to grid functionality, V2G, what that acronym was about. At some point, we hope that in the future, it's not really ready for, that vehicle to grid technology is not market ready yet. But we hope that our charging stations with a dedicated meter could eventually maybe be a place where a car could pull up and feed power back to that dedicated meter that has a utility outlet, a receptacle, emergency receptacle, to provide power to whatever needs power in the event of an emergency. But again, it's still, you might have heard of a pilot that's gonna be done up at the airport microgrid, via Nissan and the county, and it is truly, early days for that technology. So we need pilots to go out and prove that technology before we can really, put it on a network that's functioning every day like our network. And so when we complete our grant work, you can see the green dots are what exists already on our network, and the red dots are the new ones. And there's a table that will show you, but the things that are exciting to us is there's no charging out in Orleans, and we're going much farther out. If Willow Creek was the outpost, now it becomes Orleans, and that will provide vital service to that community. We're infilling in our areas where we see high usage because we need high usage stations to make the economics work. But we're also getting down to Redway and Garberville. A lot of these sites are, Redway's at the Redwood Rural Health, Garberville is at Southern Humboldt's Community Health Center, Optometry Clinic. We're partnering with Mad River Hospital in Arcata and Redwood Memorial Hospital in Fortuna, along with some of our member agencies, with the city of Arcata, the city of Eureka, city of Fortuna. So really spreading out and also just expanding like the geographic footprint of our network. So we're really excited. We hope these stations, our plan right now is that they would all be online by May of 2025. And then what you might hear coming in the future is we recently submitted a grant to the Federal Department of Transportation, their Charging and Fueling Infrastructure Grant, or CFI program. And this is for, again, community-based chargers, unlike say corridor chargers that you put on a freeway stop. These are meant to be in community, near doctor's offices, near schools, near services that people need. And so, and again, in an effort to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, to expand and fill gaps, it specifically has a rural focus, expanded charging in rural areas. We're a really good fit for this grant. We applied for this money last year and we were not awarded, but we got feedback that we were highly qualified. So we submitted again this year, and we hope to hear before the end of the calendar year whether or not we were awarded. If we were, we'll probably come back to approve that grant funding. And it will be an exciting day when we're expanding our networks. So what's included in that grant application? Again, partnering with our member agencies. So City of Blue Lake, City of Fortuna, City of Ferndale. The Yurok tribe is we would expand out here now, not a little less far than Orleans, which would be like right above this, but this is another critical location where there's really a lack of charging. So again, filling in the rural gaps. And so that's, so we would have the potential to expand by 5 new locations and 20 new points. And so I think one of the questions that was lobbed to us when we were asked to make this presentation was, how are we collaborating? So I've already said the names of the member agencies and other partner agencies in our current grants. We try to partner with community-based organizations and member agencies. We don't do this on our own because we don't own any of the sites where these are installed. So in and of itself, the network is an exercise in collaboration. We have to collaborate with the site host. But we also do a lot of collaboration in the planning of, why were those sites chosen? Where are the gaps in our community? And so we lead this group of monthly meetings of the Transportation Roundtable. And this is I'll get all the acronyms, I think. Humboldt County Association of Governments, the California Department of Transportation, the Coalition for Responsible Transportation Priorities, the North Coast Unified Air Quality Management District, Schatz Energy Research Center, Yurok Tribe, Cal Poly Humboldt, and Humboldt Transit Authority. That's like I said, a monthly ongoing meeting. The Schatz Energy Research Center is also a partner. at the airport, for that pilot project. But also there are additional ports beyond what's in the pilot. There are additional ports that will be installed in public use, like the airport. That's an ongoing collaboration. We'll provide some of those ports, some of those stations, and they'll be on our network. We also collaborated with Shots Energy Research Center on our medium duty, heavy duty blueprint work, which I presented to in the past to this point. We're involved in something called the North State Super Region Zero Emission Vehicle Working Group. The lead on that is the Mendocino County Association of Governments. The map shows all the different rural counties that participate in that, because at the state level, that we're underserved. These rural counties have additional challenges. They have economic challenges. We have getting service providers to our area challenges. We have economies of scale challenges. So these rural counties all teamed up to advocate at the state level together. That's a quarterly meeting. So the county level, we coordinate monthly. The super region, we coordinate quarterly. We also participate in the joint community choice aggregators, a transportation electrification working group. And some of the stuff we talked about are the state's framework for electrifying transportation, low carbon fuel standard, and how those costs and credits are used. We generate the kilowatt hours that we sell on our network, generate fuel standard credits because electricity is considered a low carbon fuel. So we track those proceedings and any other legislative or regulatory proceedings that might affect our work. And then also, my supervisor Dana is on the PG&E Electric Vehicle Charging Network Program Advisory Committee and the V2X. Of course, we can't keep our acronyms straight. V2G is typically vehicle to grid. You could vehicle to something else. And so people started throwing in X because it could be vehicle to grid, vehicle to building, vehicle to emergency receptacle, vehicle to phone charger. Anyway, that's the pilot of the airport microgrid. So again, an act of collaboration. So that's some of our ongoing collaborations. Things that we deal with. Why didn't we solve all these problems last year? Why did I just come in and tell you mission accomplished? Well, the Americans with Disabilities Act compliance is becoming more and more difficult, more and more costly, as these stations are now widely understood as for public use. The state and local jurisdictions have increased the requirements to make them ADA accessible, which is absolutely correct. And the right thing for the state to do, and the right thing for local permitting agencies to do. But now we have to do that, we have to use up 4 existing parking spaces, and we only get 2 when we're done, because we have to make them wider and they have fan loading aisles. A lot of vehicles actually have minimum parking requirements that are also mandated by building codes. And so there's always a compromise. If they're going to give up 2 parking spaces, that has to meet other requirements. So ADA is tricky and can be costly, and it's a lot of physical paving. So it's not just put the station in the ground, but you have to alter this. Okay. Material lead times, I'm sure we've all heard about that, but it really affects electrical equipment. The utility capacity issue, again, we've all heard about it. It really affects these projects because these chargers and the vehicles are just much bigger loads than people realize or think about. They're big loads. They're like, could be the equivalent of a building. A lot of buildings get a 200 amp service. Our installations need a 400 amp service. They're big. That's all it is. So it's a lot of capacity. Cost and inflation, the grants get awarded and then you get the money sometimes a year or 2 later. That can be a problem. Site host has to want it. They have to want to be a site host. They have to not be scared of giving up parking spaces. They have to see some benefit to increase foot traffic at their business, serving the community. It meets their mission. But it's got to work for the site host because we do not own the property. And unexpected construction costs, probably just a subset of inflation. But they come up and it becomes a problem. If you're exceeding your grant funding, that can be problematic, and time constraints. So it's taken, these have all become very long lead times. So those are some of the constraints. So I think if I were to summarize, we had a lot of goals. RCA has a lot of initiatives that try to address those goals. I think we've seen a lot of success in implementing those. One of our goals is to develop charging, and we have developed it to a certain extent. that I reported on, and we're gonna continue to try to develop that public charging. And, you know, and that said, there's a lot of challenges as we do that work, but, you know, we're trying to diligently, advance that work to the best of our ability. And with that, and with interest in everybody's time, I will stop and leave a minute for questions.
Great, thank you, Mike. I know I was writing down a couple of questions and you answered them all, so, great presentation.
One thing that Mike has done a really good job in mitigating cost overruns and getting creative because of some of the items that he mentioned. And one of the most successful is that he's partnered with member agencies that are in the process of developing a site. So I think Carlson Park was one where it was a gravel lot and then they were going to pave it. And so the city picked up the cost of paving because they were gonna do it anyways, but coordinated with us for the installation. So that really reduces our cost of installing into like an existing parking lot where we have to dig up and repave. So just as member agencies and you're hearing projects, come through, it's nice to kind of consider as sites are getting developed on the front end, if a charging station would be a good fit.
Absolutely. If I could just build on that, we also recently, one of our sites in that grant fell out of the grant. It wasn't a good fit. It was College of the Redwoods. But there's a new site being developed at the old Harley Davidson. And Eureka will be the future home of the Department of Motor Vehicles. They really wanted to have some chargers there, and they're just about to break ground. So like Eileen said, we're trying to, and we've successfully partnered with them so that right before they were gonna tear up the parking lot, we could agree that that would be a great place to install chargers. And some of that work already had to be done in site development, and it really is gonna reduce our cost in adding that site. Versus if we just were to start fresh. Also, I just want to say how great it feels that there would be EV charging at the DMV. I just can't think of a better place. You're gonna be there for a minute, right? Like, get some charge. It just seems very.
Yeah, go ahead, Elise.
I noticed with your distribution, there's quite a few EV charging stations in Blue Lake, and I'm wondering, is that because there's a bunch of them in Rio?
Yeah, that's the big reason. Yeah, the Rancheria was successful in finding funding for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the stations. But they didn't want the responsibility to maintain them and network them and deal with the payment modules and the stuff that we do. So they're on our network, but those are actually owned by the Rancheria. And then some we got grant funding for. But yes, the bulk of them are at the Rancheria. We have one single port at City Hall. And that's, on city property, and then Town Square, if we got that federal grant, the new Town Square is where we think. We would put 4 new ports in the city.
So, and the ones at the Rancheria, are they 100% grid fed, or are some of those fed by their solar?
There's 2 of the charging stations that can get powered on. They're all grid fed when the grid is on. But yeah, when the grid goes down, there's 2 stations there, 4 ports that can still work under their microgrid.
And Katie may have more, but I believe Blue Lake Rancheria is looking to expand as well in applying for grants for additional charging stations.
Yes, so Eileen, as part of our match funding for the Terrace proposal, we are actively pursuing stateside funding for the DC fast chargers to complement the ones that we have currently.
The other question, if we're successful getting charging station at the Town Square, there's 2 side-by-side handicap parking spaces. So when those charging stations go in, are they gonna be placed in such a way that a handicap vehicle and a non-handicap vehicle can access them?
That's a good question. So we can't use existing handicap parking spaces as our ADA compliant. So when you put in new chargers, you have to create new spaces that are ADA accessible. But there's a slight nuance in that they're not placarded sites. So that means anyone can actually park there and charge. Typically, that's how the setup, but we can't install charging stations and rely on the existing ADA parking stalls to do our work for us. So we still have to make one of our new parking stalls 12 feet wide. And it has to have a 5-foot van loading aisle. And then they're considered ADA accessible. But as an example, you wouldn't get a ticket for parking there if you were not placarded for ADA parking. Did I get that?
Yeah, I get it. I just assumed that they were going in the brand new ADA parking spots.
And I totally get why, there are ADA requirements and you can't then piggyback on somebody else who, like the city met the ADA requirements for that development. We can't piggyback on that when we come in later. We have to be additional to, and not in the place of.
Any other questions? Wonderful. Well, thank you, Mike. That was a great presentation, and I guess we'll open it up for public comment. If anybody in the public or anybody online, all right. Back, any last thoughts? All right, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Great. Okay, and that will take us to item 8, which is staff reports, and we have our interim executive director's report.
Yeah, so I just wanted to report out with the storm yesterday. I think the quote was, power was dodgy at the airport yesterday. But the airport microgrid seamlessly powered through multiple islanding events. I think we experienced 5 islanding events until power was completely restored to the grid around 5:30 this morning. It is a little trickier when we have prolonged storms because it's not able to charge back up, but it is doing what we set out to do. So just wanted to report out on that. And then just, I think because it's on the top of my mind, we're working as hard as we can on getting an agreed upon agreement with Department of Energy for the Terrace grant. We've been told that we need to have it finalized before the end of this calendar year. So this is a process that usually takes 3 to 4 months at best with Department of Energy, and we're trying to do it in two months with 2 major holidays. But we're committing as much resources as necessary to get it done.
Any questions, folks? Take it out to the public.
Heidi, you have your.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Heidi. All right, the screen.
I just want to, as a member of the Terrace group, I just really want to extend my appreciation to Eileen, Lexi, and their team. They have led these negotiations with grace and with fortitude. And not only does it benefit RCEA, but it most certainly benefits the 4 tribal nations that are part of it. So gratitude to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. Any other questions or comments? And again, we'll open it up to the public. There's no public. We're on Zoom. All right, well, then item 9, which is future agenda items. Are there any requests for future agenda items from our directors?
Sir,
Yes.
at some point in the next year, would it be appropriate to have a report that status of wind energy in the county?
And yeah, and its future
Yeah.
existence with new administrations. I think that, yeah, we haven't had a wind update in a while, I feel like, and there probably is a lot of moving pieces, and so that would be, yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah, I think in the new year would be a good time to update the new. I do think there's a lot of scrambling right now on trying to ensure that funds are still flowing to develop, you know, the port and all the things needed for wind energy. So we'll report back.
Go ahead, Heidi.
I'll leave it up to staff, but I'm wondering if there's a role for RCEA relative to the ultra power in Blue Lake, especially as it relates to the recent tragic events of an individual trying to theoretically steal copper and instead electrocuting themselves. I don't have a specific proposal. I just, wanted to make sure that you all were aware that that really unfortunate incident happened early this month. And for staff to think about if there's any way that we want to think about ultra power and how RCAA may be able to engage.
I mean, yeah, I take it to stop because I don't know
I,
anything about that, but it sounds, I did see that in the news that that event took place, but beyond that, I don't know much about the implications of.
yeah, and not speaking to that event, but, staff's been very involved with, the city of Blue Lake, and the, Director of Power Resources, Richard Engel, went to the Blue Lake Planning Commission meeting, Monday night, and we'll go to the next Blue Lake City Council meeting. Just to be there to answer questions as far as RCA's role in the development of that site, in being an off-taker, if it was to be developed out as battery storage, and just how that meets our goals. And we're trying to offer as much assistance as possible, as the city decides what to do with that site.
So, all right, anything else? Okay, well, with that, we will move to adjournment, and our next meeting will be an early one again, so Tuesday, December 17th, here at 3:30. It's a Tuesday, okay. And we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Safe.